one of the real iconic figures in sports in our city, in the baby boomer generation. So if you're old enough to remember sports in the 60s and 70s, if you have a memory of those teams, then this one hit you with wow. And that today was the passing of Willis Reed at the age of 80. When I first saw it, the first thing I said was, wow, Willis Reed. Now, I knew Willis Reed pretty well, obviously, doing what I did and doing what he did. I mean, I know Willis very well. But what this is about is, if you were an NBA fan, you know Willis Reed. If you were a Knicks fan, then Willis Reed has a cherished place in your heart because he was the leader. Now, if you're not old enough to know the way this worked, I'll give you the history lesson. The Knicks were improving. They had Reed, but they had a center who was a big-time scorer and a big-time center named Walt Bellamy. The Knicks made a move for Dave DeBusschere. It not only brought a great two-way player. DeBusschere was one of the all-time defensive players and really an amazing forward. Now, at that time, he could be what you would consider to be a power forward, and he played against power forwards, even though he was, 6'5", 6'6", and could shoot from the outside. But he was a great athlete. He also was a pitcher for the White Sox. But they made a trade that not only brought DeBusschere and his toughness and his defense and his leadership to the Knicks, but also freed up Reed to move to center. So now the Knicks took off. They had drafted a kid named Walt Frazier to put in the backcourt with Dick Barnett. They had Bill Bradley at one forward. Now they had Dave DeBusschere at the other forward and Willis Reed at center. Then they had players like Cazzie Russell, who was one of the 2 or 3 best players in the country when he was in college. So was Bill Bradley. And they became role players with the great Knicks teams. The Knicks teams unselfish, great defensive teams led by Red Holtzman. Teams that pass the ball, great movement, great defense, shoot the ball inside, go inside with Reed, shoot the ball outside. If it had been a three-point goal, there's so many of the shots that DeBusschere and Bradley made would have been three-pointers. Cazzie in the corner would have been just lights out. They had the Minutemen off the bench, Cazzie, Dave Stallworth, okay? Guys like that, Phil Jackson, off the bench. Later on, for the second championship, they brought in Jerry Lucas, and they brought in Earl Monroe and won a second championship. But the first championship is what everybody remembers. The great 69-70 series, and it's one of the most puzzling series of all time. The Knicks were playing the great Laker team, Chamberlain, West, Elgin Baylor. Game 5 at the Garden, Willis is getting torched by Chamberlain. Chamberlain is killing him in the first half of the game. Willis goes down. He gets hurt. And the Knicks go to a small lineup, and Chamberlain basically never touches the ball again. It's almost like what you watched with Purdue and FDU. Never touches the ball again. And they go on to an unbelievable victory. And that Game 5 is discounted way too much when people look back on that championship. Game 6, they don't have Reed. He's not playing. They have a 3-2 lead. They go back to L.A. And Chamberlain, against Nate Bowman et al., puts up 45 points and 28 rebounds in a Game 6 win for the Lakers. So everybody figures they're coming back here. And Chamberlain's going to be unstoppable in Game 7. And nobody expects Reed to play. We don't hear he's going to play. He's not going to play. He's going to play. And then all of a sudden, coming out of the tunnel before the game is Willis, as the crowd, the crescendos in the Garden going crazy as Willis limps onto the court, goes out, takes a shot. The place goes nuts. Warms up, takes a shot. The place goes insane. The game starts. He comes in and hits a couple of buckets. And for some reason, this completely just leveled the Lakers. They were nowhere to be found in a game that was never close, in a game where Walt Frazier played the greatest game he ever played, in a Game 7. But it was those moments for Willis Reed coming out of the tunnel that is considered one of the great iconic moments in the history of New York sports. Lifted, and he didn't have a big game that night. Frazier had a brilliant game. The Knicks swarmed and went crazy, and the Lakers just seemed out of it from the start. Why this happened this way, why Chamberlain reacted this way, is why the puzzle with Chamberlain has always been so insane. In Game 6, he had 45 points and 28 rebounds. He was unstoppable. The next game, you couldn't find him. And what was a crushing loss for the Lakers, who had so many crushing losses, and for Chamberlain, who had so many crushing losses. And the Knicks went on to a championship in what was a special time in New York. Because at the same time, you had had the Jets and the Mets, and you had such a tremendous couple of years with those teams. And the Knicks came back and won another championship. And it was a different team there because you had different players. But the bottom line is they won 2 championships in a couple of years. And Reed was the captain, the storied leader, the captain of the team. And forever he was beloved in New York City and beloved by all New York fans for this, being the captain. He had a place that was there to be cherished and was honored and cherished forever. It was cemented. It's what winning means in this town. He was cemented into this team. You know how Met fans think about, say, Keith Hernandez for being a leader with the 86 Mets. Well, Willis Reed, and this is no knock on Keith, but Willis Reed was bigger than that. His place was higher than that in this town. He was he was put on a pedestal because of his leadership, and he was the captain of these great Knicks teams. And they were great teams. Brilliantly coached, cerebral teams, teams that own this city. And so that's why Willis has never heard anything but cheers in New York since. And he passed away today. I don't know what the cause was. The captain was 80 years old. You know, you get to a point where you don't think about people for a while. And then the thing you hear after they retire for a while is they go to the Hall of Fame and you make contact with them. And unless they get into the media, get into broadcasting or something, they go away. Unless they're coaching or in broadcasting, they just kind of disappear. Then they get in the Hall of Fame. And then after that, you don't hear anything about them. For maybe you see him at an old timers game or see him at an event once in a while. Willis did some coaching. He coached at Creighton. He was an assistant coach at St. John's. Bounced around a little bit. But for the most part, he just was always the captain. And when you think about those teams, few teams had a grip on the city the way that Knicks team did. And that group, for all their brilliance, Reed, DeBusschere, Bradley, Frazier, Barnett, Red Holtzman, especially cherished that first championship team. And that's why it's a very, very sad day today when you talk about the passing of the captain. And when you say the captain, I know people think of, say, Jeter, but Willis was the captain first. And he was special. And he's been held in that special place with that special esteem for a very long time. As I said, gone today at 80. May he rest in peace.